12 Black R&B legends reportedly sold their souls to the devil for fame. Voices that shook heaven, but whispers say they sang with something far darker. Some claimed they made music with angels. Others swore they danced with demons. From fiery guitars to voices that could still the stars themselves, these artists rose to fame wrapped in shadows. Legends born from light, haunted by the dark. Rumors spread that they traded their souls for the kind of talent no mortal could possess. Were they divinely blessed or eternally cursed? Tonight, we pull back the curtain on fame's forbidden side, where glory meets the grave, and every hit might come with a hidden price. Before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe, and join Black Hollywood Legends, where the music's greatest mysteries are finally brought into the light. Jimi Hendrix, the man who set music on fire. When Jimi Hendrix walked on the Monterey Pop Festival stage in 1967, he didn't just play the guitar, he summoned it. His Fender Stratocaster burst into flames like an offering to the gods, and the crowd stood frozen, unsure if they had witnessed genius, madness, or something supernatural. Born Johnny Allen Hendrix on November 27, 1942, in Seattle, Washington, Jimi grew up amid poverty and chaos. After his father returned from World War II, he renamed his son James Marshall Hendrix, but even that couldn't heal the fractures at home. In the loneliness of his childhood, Jimi found refuge in a battered one-string guitar. He strummed until his fingers bled, chasing the sounds that seemed to come from another world. By the mid-1960s, Hendrix was grinding through life as a backup guitarist for legends like Little Richard and the Isley Brothers. But when he landed in London in 1966, destiny finally opened its doors. Within months, the Jimi Hendrix Experience was born, and the world would never sound the same again. His debut album, Are You Experienced, 1967, shattered every musical boundary. Purple Haze became an anthem of rebellion and transcendence, its distorted tones transforming rock into something spiritual. Hendrix didn't just play notes. He made the guitar cry, whisper, and scream. Critics didn't know whether to call it innovation or witchcraft. Some said he'd reinvented sound itself. Others whispered that he'd made a deal with forces beyond this world. But behind the electrifying spectacle was a man drowning in solitude and fatigue. Hendrix pushed himself relentlessly, sleeping only in fragments between studio sessions. "Music doesn't come from me," he once said softly. "It comes through me." That single confession sparked endless debate. Was he speaking of divine inspiration or a darker possession? To white audiences, Hendrix was a revolutionary, a black man who conquered rock, a genre they claimed as their own. To many in the black community, he was both hero and heretic, accused of abandoning his roots. This duality tore at him. He dreamed of uniting all sounds, gospel, blues, jazz, and rock, into one universal truth. But fame became his prison. By 1970, exhaustion and despair shadowed every performance. On September 18th of that year, at just 27, Jimi Hendrix was found dead in a London flat, officially from asphyxiation after barbiturate intoxication. Yet rumors refused to die. Missing ambulance records, strange phone calls, and conflicting witness statements fed endless theories. Some said he'd been silenced. Others believed the bargain he never spoke of had finally come due. Perhaps the truth is simpler and sadder. Jimi Hendrix didn't sell his soul. He spent it. Every note he played was a piece of himself offered to the world, until there was nothing left but fire, sound, and eternity. Aretha Franklin, the woman who made heaven listen. When Aretha Louise Franklin stepped to the microphone, even time seemed to hold its breath. Her voice wasn't just sound, it was spirit. It carried the thunder of gospel choirs, the ache of generations, and the blazing rhythm of revolution. Born on March 25, 1942, in Memphis, Tennessee, Aretha was the daughter of the legendary Reverend C.L. Franklin, a preacher whose sermons drew believers and civil rights leaders alike. Her first stage was her father's church in Detroit, where she sang not out of ambition, but out of devotion. Parishioners swore she didn't just sing to God, she sang with him. But when Aretha crossed from the sacred world of gospel to the soulful stage of pop, some whispered she had traded the holy for the worldly. Her early years at Columbia Records left her brilliance caged, her voice powerful but misunderstood. Then, in 1967, she found her freedom at Atlantic Records. With one word, respect, she changed everything. The song became an anthem, not just for women, but for an entire generation demanding to be seen, heard, and valued. The world crowned her the Queen of Soul. Her voice could move mountains or silence them. Some said it was too perfect to be human. Others, drawn to myth, whispered she had made a secret pact with something divine. Aretha never confirmed, never denied. She simply carried her Bible everywhere and prayed before every show. Musicians recalled strange moments in the studio, flickering lights, an unexplainable stillness, as if heaven itself had paused to listen. Over her lifetime, Aretha recorded 112 charting singles, won 18 Grammy Awards, and sold more than 75 million records. Yet behind the crown was a woman of immense vulnerability, a private soul who battled heartbreak, weight struggles, and an industry that alternately worshipped and wounded her. In 1972, her live recording of Amazing Grace transformed a simple church into holy ground. Decades later, her voice at President Barack Obama's inauguration brought the world to tears once again. And when she passed in 2018, presidents, preachers, and performers all bowed in reverence. Because Aretha Franklin didn't just sing about faith, she was faith. Her gift wasn't a bargain with the divine. It was a blessing shared with the world. In every note, she bridged heaven and earth. And that's why her voice will never die. Marvin Gaye, the man who made America listen. When Marvin Pence Gaye Jr. released What's Going On in 1971, he didn't just redefine soul music. He redefined the soul of America. Born on April 2nd, 1939, in Washington, D.C., Marvin grew up under the heavy hand of his father, a strict Pentecostal preacher who ruled their home with fear and discipline. For young Marvin, music wasn't just a passion, it was survival. By the early 1960s, Motown had discovered his velvet voice, and soon he was crowned the Prince of Motown, serenading the world with classics like Ain't No Mountain High Enough and I Heard It Through the Grapevine. But behind the charming smile and flawless performances was a man at war with himself, a genius haunted by doubt, faith, and longing. When the world outside erupted with protests, war, and division, Marvin turned inward. He disappeared from the spotlight, only to return with something that felt almost otherworldly. What's Going On wasn't just music, it was prophecy, a soulful cry for peace and understanding wrapped in pain and poetry. Motown executives called it too controversial. Listeners called it a miracle. The album went on to sell millions, changing not just the charts, but the consciousness of a generation. Those close to him swore Marvin's inspiration bordered on the divine. He would wake from dreams with melodies fully formed, as if whispered by spirits. Was a human genius, or was something higher speaking through him? But even divine messengers bleed. Marvin's brilliance carried a terrible burden: depression, addiction, and spiritual torment. There's a war going on inside me, he once confessed. That war never stopped. On April 1st, 1984, one day before his 45th birthday, that inner storm ended in tragedy. Marvin was shot and killed by his own father. The world mourned not just the loss of a legend, but of a man whose voice tried to heal what the world refused to face. Whether guided by angels or crushed by demons, Marvin Gaye's music remains eternal, a confession, a prayer, and a cry for peace from a man who gave his heart so that the world might finally listen. Stevie Wonder. Wynne Stevland Hardaway Judkins, later known to the world as Stevie Wonder, was born prematurely on May 13, 1950. Doctors placed him in an incubator with excessive oxygen, a mistake that caused permanent blindness. What many saw as tragedy, however, became the spark of a miracle. Growing up in Detroit, Stevie transformed sound into his playground. He tapped on tables, hummed melodies from memory, and learned to recognize people by the rhythm of their footsteps. By the age of 11, he had already signed with Motown Records, and at just 13, he released Fingertips, Part 2, a live performance that became his first #1 hit. Audiences were stunned that such brilliance could come from a boy who had never seen light. As he matured, Stevie broke every boundary of R&B and pop. His 1970s masterpieces, Talking Book, Inner Visions, and Songs in the Key of Life, redefined what music could be. He wrote, produced, and played nearly every instrument himself, fusing gospel soul with funk and early synthesizer sounds years before his time. His lyrics carried messages of love, faith, and social justice. In 1973, Superstition earned him 2 Grammy Awards, the beginning of a career that would total 25 Grammys, including a Lifetime Achievement Award. But with success came curiosity. How could a man without sight create music that painted entire worlds in sound? Some said he had a sixth sense. Others believed he was divinely guided. Stevie rejected the myths, saying, "I may not see with my eyes, but I hear the world's heart." Even a near-fatal car crash in 1973, one that left him in a coma for days, couldn't silence his spirit. When he returned to the stage, he sang with more soul than ever before, as if he had glimpsed eternity. Stevie Wonder remains one of the rare artists to sell over 100 million records without scandal or compromise. His blindness didn't confine him, it freed him. Through melodies that felt like prayers and rhythms that united generations, he proved that true vision doesn't come from the eyes, it comes from the soul. Ray Charles, the man who saw through music. Before the world called him the genius of soul, Ray Charles Robinson walked through more darkness than most could ever imagine. Born on September 23, 1930, in Albany, Georgia, and raised in the dusty streets of Greenville, Florida, Ray's world dimmed completely by the age of 7 when glaucoma stole his sight. But his mother, Arthur Robinson, refused to let blindness define her son. "You may have lost your sight," she told him, "but you haven't lost your mind." That defiance became his light. Ray learned to play piano by touch, feeling the rhythm through his fingertips. Memorizing chords like Braille made a sound. By 15, he was performing for a living. And by the early 1950s, he was reshaping American music, mixing gospel's fire, blues pain, and jazz's freedom into a sound the world had never heard before. When he released I Got a Woman in 1954, it hit like a thunderclap. Churchgoers accused him of stealing God's music and giving it to the devil. But that daring fusion became the heartbeat of soul itself. In the years that followed came What Did I Say, Georgia on My Mind, Hit the Road Jack, songs that didn't just play on the radio, they moved people. His raspy, pleading voice could make you laugh and cry in the same breath. But behind the genius was a man wrestling with pain, heroin addiction, heartbreak, and the constant sting of racism. Still, Ray never lost his wit or humility. When people whispered that his gift was supernatural, that maybe he could see through sound, he just laughed and said, "I just listen better than most folks." Over his lifetime, Ray Charles earned 17 Grammy Awards, sold more than 90 million records, and became one of the first legends inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yet his greatest achievement wasn't fame. It was how he turned pain into power, blindness into brilliance, and silence into song. When Ray Charles passed away in 2004, the world didn't lose a man who bargained with darkness. It lost a man who taught it how to sing through it. Ray Charles didn't sell his soul. He sang it. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston. There are singers. And then there was Whitney Elizabeth Houston. A voice so pure it could melt hearts. So powerful it could silence entire arenas. Born on August 9th, 1963, in Newark, New Jersey, Whitney came into the world already surrounded by music and expectation. Her mother, gospel legend Cissy Houston, sang backup for Aretha Franklin and Elvis Presley. Her cousin, none other than Dionne Warwick. With a lineage like that, greatness wasn't just in her blood, it was her destiny. By age 11, Whitney's crystalline tone already turned heads in her church choir. But when music mogul Clive Davis discovered her in 1983 and signed her to Arista Records, a star was born, and superstardom followed faster than anyone could have imagined. Her debut album shattered records, selling over 25 million copies, and by the late 80s, she wasn't just famous. She was the most successful female artist in the world. Whitney's voice defied logic, rich, effortless, and angelic. Songs like I Will Always Love You and The Greatest Love of All didn't just showcase her talent. They felt like glimpses of something divine. Some called her a miracle. Others whispered that no human voice could be that flawless. But behind the perfection was a woman carrying an unbearable weight, the demand to always be divine. Fame became her gilded cage. Critics expected miracles. Producers expected magic. The world expected nothing less than heaven in every note. Behind the glamour and the applause were sleepless nights, emotional storms, and a turbulent marriage to Bobby Brown. Yet even through heartbreak, Whitney's light never fully dimmed. In 1991, her live performance of the Star-Spangled Banner at the Super Bowl transcended patriotism. It became history. The rendition was so breathtaking that radio stations released it as a single, and it soared to the Billboard Top 20, an almost impossible feat for a national anthem. But even after her tragic death on February 11, 2012, at just 48 years old, the myth persisted that her gift was otherworldly, that perfection came at a supernatural cost. The truth was far more human and far more heartbreaking. Whitney didn't make a deal with darkness. She bore the weight of being extraordinary in a world that punishes imperfection. She didn't sell her soul. She gave it one song at a time. And through every note, every breath, every echo that still lingers in the air, Whitney Elizabeth Houston remains eternal. Prince. When the lights turned violet and the first electric riff ripped through the air, you didn't just hear Prince, you felt him. Born Prince Rogers Nelson on June 7, 1958, in Minneapolis, he was more than a musician. He was a phenomenon. At just 7, he wrote his first song. By his teens, he could play over 20 instruments. And by his 20s, he wasn't following music trends. He was rewriting them. His 1984 masterpiece Purple Rain sold over 25 million copies, merging rock, funk, soul, and something spiritual that no one could quite define. Dressed in velvet, heels, and mystery, Prince blurred every line between man and myth, sacred and sensual, heaven and hell. Watching him perform felt like witnessing a revelation. His guitar didn't just play, it screamed, cried, and prayed. There were moments on stage when he'd fall silent, eyes closed, whispering words no one else could hear. One of his most haunting lines, "There is more beyond the sound," became a riddle his fans still chase. Was he speaking of music, faith, or something cosmic? Rumors spread about his interest in the occult and metaphysics, but Prince never confirmed or denied a thing. He thrived on mystery. "Energy never dies," he once said, "it just changes form." Behind the enigma was a man obsessed, not with fame, but with freedom. He fought record labels for control of his art, even changing his name in 1993 to an unpronounceable symbol to declare independence. In his world, music wasn't business. It was divine ownership. A perfectionist to the core, he produced, arranged, and played nearly every instrument on his albums. Across 39 studio records, 7 Grammys, and over 150 million sales, Prince remained untouchable, living inside Paisley Park, his secret sanctuary glowing with purple lights, sacred symbols, and whispered legends. When he passed away in April 2016, the world mourned not only a musical genius, but a riddle that will never fully be solved. Prince never sold his soul. He protected it. Wrapped in layers of rhythm, mystery, and magic, he left behind a truth only he could fully understand. Some legends aren't meant to be explained, only felt. Michael Jackson, the man who danced with the divine. When Michael Joseph Jackson first glided across the Motown 25 stage in 1983, the world stopped breathing for a moment. The crowd screamed, the lights shimmered, and millions watching from their living rooms felt they had just witnessed something otherworldly, a man defying gravity itself. Born on August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana, Michael was the seventh of 9 children in a struggling family. But from the moment he touched a microphone, destiny claimed him. By 5, he was leading the Jackson 5 with impossible poise. By 25, he was the most famous entertainer alive. Thriller, his 1982 masterpiece, didn't just break records. It rewrote history, selling more than 70 million copies and transforming pop into a global religion. His movements were too smooth, his pitch too perfect, his presence too magnetic. To many, it felt almost supernatural. Whispers grew. How could one man be this flawless? Some swore he'd struck a secret bargain to sustain his brilliance. Michael never entertained a rumor. The songs just come to me, he'd say softly. I hear them fully formed in my head. I just write them down. Behind the sequin glove and diamond smile, though, was a man haunted by loneliness and pain. The child star who conquered the world carried the exhaustion of a life lived under a microscope. He fought insomnia, physical strain, and the relentless demand to remain extraordinary. Yet even when his body faltered, his spirit refused to dim. During his Dangerous and History tours, he performed for crowds of over 100,000 a night, sometimes collapsing backstage, only to return minutes later as if lifted by unseen wings. To fans, Michael wasn't simply an artist, he was a phenomenon. His dance defied physics. His voice transcended genre. His presence blurred the line between man and myth. To skeptics, he was too perfect to be real. To believers, he was living proof that angels could walk and moonwalk among us. When he passed on June 25, 2009, the world wept as though it had lost its heartbeat. But Michael Jackson's story was never one of darkness. It was about transcendence, the power to turn pain into performance, suffering into song, and humanity into something divine. He didn't sell his soul for fame. He shared it. With every note, every breath, every impossible step that made the world believe in magic. R. Kelly, the rise and ruin of a musical prophet. Long before scandal stained his name, Robert Sylvester Kelly was hailed as one of the most gifted voices in R&B history, a man whose melodies could move both body and soul. Born on January 8, 1967, on the gritty streets of Chicago's South Side, young Kelly grew up surrounded by hardship and heartbreak. Music became his only escape. He sang for spare change on subway platforms, turning pain into rhythm until a local talent show in the late 80s changed everything. By 1993, his debut album, 12 Play, catapulted him into superstardom. Songs like Bump and Grind in Your Body's Callan redefined sensual R&B. Critics called him the new Marvin Gaye. Fans crowned him the king of R&B. He had a rare alchemy, fusing gospel soul, hip-hop's grit, and pop's seduction, creating a sound that felt almost otherworldly. Those who worked with him spoke of his mystical process. He'd vanish into a dark studio for hours, emerging with songs seemingly born from thin air. "The music just comes to me," he often said, a statement that would fuel one of R&B's most enduring myths, that Kelly's gift came from somewhere beyond. He once confessed to a journalist that melodies whispered to him in his dreams. He'd wake up, rush to the mic, and record before they faded. Through the 1990s, Kelly became a cultural powerhouse, writing and producing for Michael Jackson, Aaliyah, Whitney Houston, and countless others. Then came I Believe, I Can Fly in 1996, a song of hope and transcendence that sold over 8 million copies and earned 3 Grammy Awards. It became an anthem of freedom and faith, even as its creator grew increasingly trapped by his own demons. As fame deepened, the light that made him shine began to consume him. Allegations, secrets, and darkness started to eclipse the genius. To some, it felt as though the man who once sang of angels had made a deal with something far more sinister, trading peace for power. And yet, beyond the scandal and ruin, one truth remains. Kelly reshaped modern R&B. His influence runs through artists like Usher, Chris Brown, and The Weeknd, echoes of a sound born in both pain and brilliance. Kelly's legacy stands as a haunting paradox, a man touched by heaven but undone by his own humanity. His story is both a triumph and a tragedy, a reminder that genius can lift us to divine heights or drag us into darkness. Beyoncé. Few artists in history embody perfection the way Beyoncé, Giselle Knowles-Carter, does. Born on September 4th, 1981, in Houston, Texas, she began her journey singing in church choirs, her voice already carrying the echoes of destiny. From those humble beginnings, she rose to global fame as the heart of Destiny's Child, the best-selling girl group of all time, with over 100 million records sold. But when Beyoncé stepped out on her own in 2003 with Dangerously in Love, she didn't just become a superstar. She redefined what superstardom meant. Her voice, her precision, her endurance. Everything about her felt supernatural, almost too flawless to be real. Even her peers struggled to explain how one woman could perform with such unshakable control and grace night after night. As her fame ascended to mythic levels, the internet began to craft its own legends. Clips of her electrifying performances flooded online spaces with captions like, "She's possessed by Sasha Fierce," a nod to the alter ego she introduced in 2008. When Beyoncé admitted, "When I'm on stage, something takes over me," fans heard passion, but conspiracy theorists heard pact. They whispered about demons while missing the truth. She was channeling art, not darkness. Whether commanding the stage at Coachella before 125,000 roaring fans or dancing nonstop for 2 straight hours without missing a beat, Beyoncé radiated power that seemed almost otherworldly. Yet behind that divine aura lies a relentless worker. She co-produces and co-directs her tours, oversees her label, and crafts every movement, every visual, every frame with surgical precision. Her 2016 visual masterpiece Lemonade wasn't just an album. It was a revolution, a poetic blend of music, politics, and emotion that celebrated Black womanhood and empowerment. It earned her 32 Grammy Awards, the most in history, and cemented her as not just an icon, but a movement. Those who've worked beside her describe something sacred in her process. She prays, meditates, and pours her spirit into every rehearsal. Beneath the lights, she's not possessed by anything dark, but fueled by discipline, faith, and heritage. Beyoncé didn't sell her soul for fame. She forged it through sweat, fire, and divine vision. The light she carries on stage isn't unnatural. It's the reflection of every woman who's ever fought to be seen, to be heard, and to be free. Robert Johnson, the man who met the devil at the crossroads. Long before Jimi Hendrix or Prince electrified the stage, there was a lone figure standing beneath the Mississippi moon, a man with a battered guitar and a soul full of fire. His name was Robert Leroy Johnson, born on May 8, 1911, in Hazelhurst, Mississippi. A poor, wandering bluesman who would one day become one of the most mysterious and influential figures in American music history. Between 1936 and 1937, Johnson recorded just 29 songs, but those songs like Crossroad Blues, Hellhound on My Trail, and Love in Vain would alter the course of music forever. His guitar didn't just play notes, it spoke in tongues. Even seasoned musicians couldn't explain his technique. It was as if his fingers had found a sound from another world. That mystery gave birth to one of music's most haunting legends. According to the tale, sometime in the early 1930s, Johnson met a dark stranger at a deserted crossroads near Clarksdale, Mississippi. The figure, said to be the devil himself, took Robert's guitar, tuned it, and handed it back, granting him supernatural mastery in exchange for his soul. The story caught fire across the South, where gospel, fear, and African hoodoo folklore often dance together. Johnson never denied it. In fact, his lyrics fueled the myth, whispering of hellhounds, crossroads, and deals with the devil. His voice carried both agony and ecstasy, the sound of a man haunted by his own brilliance. But historians tell another version, one grounded in grit and genius. Johnson had vanished from the scene for nearly a year, only to return with a mastery that stunned everyone. Many now believe he trained under blues pioneer Ike Zimmerman, who, according to rumor, taught him to play in graveyards at night for peace and solitude. Whether truth or metaphor, the Crossroads story revealed something deeper. The battle of a poor black man daring to shape his destiny in a world built to break him. Robert Johnson's life ended as mysteriously as it began. On August 16, 1938, at just 27 years old, he died, allegedly poisoned by a jealous husband in a juke joint. Yet his spirit refused to fade. His music later inspired giants like Eric Clapton, Keith Richards, and Bob Dylan. Even today, artists still chase the ghost of Robert Johnson, the man who may have struck a deal not with the devil, but with destiny itself. His Crossroads wasn't just a place on a map. It was a symbol of ambition, sacrifice, and the eternal price of genius. Tommy Johnson, the first man who danced with the devil. Before Robert Johnson's legend haunted the world, another man had already whispered that same dark secret. His name was Tommy Johnson, born in January 1896 in Terry, Mississippi, a bluesman with a falsetto that could chill your bones and a soul that trembled with every note. Long before fame found his namesake Robert, Tommy boldly told anyone who'd listen that he had made a deal with the devil at the Crossroads. Not as a metaphor, but as truth. He claimed the devil tuned his guitar himself, gifting him a talent so raw it could raise the dead. In the deep South of the 1920s, a place where faith, fear, and music were inseparable, such a confession made Tommy both a legend and a ghost. His songs, Canned Heat Blues and Big Road Blues, weren't just music, they were confessions wrapped in melody. Each performance felt like an exorcism. His hands trembled, his eyes rolled back, and his voice cracked with anguish, leaving crowds stunned into silence. Some swore they saw him fall into a trance, possessed, perhaps, by the very spirit he once bargained with. But behind the myth stood a brilliant storyteller. Tommy understood the power of mystery. In a world overflowing with struggling musicians, he used the devil's legend to carve his name into eternity. Historians now believe his tale of selling his soul was part performance, part survival, a daring form of self-promotion in a time when black artists had few other ways to be remembered. Still, the story grew beyond him. The idea of a man trading his soul for greatness spoke to something deep in the human heart, the hunger for recognition, the price of ambition. When Robert Johnson later appeared, his own eerie songs and untimely death only reignited Tommy's legend. The two became one in folklore, one man, one myth, one eternal crossroads. Tommy Johnson died in 1956, mostly forgotten, yet his shadow never left. Without Tommy, there might have been no Robert Johnson, no Hendrix, no Prince, no whispers of midnight pacts between genius and darkness. His story reminds us that true art often walks hand in hand with sacrifice. So we believe, were these 12 black R&B legends truly touched by darkness, or simply too extraordinary for the world to understand? From Robert Johnson's Midnight Crossroads to Beyoncé's blinding stage light, perhaps the deal was never with the devil at all, but with destiny itself. If you love uncovering the hidden truths behind Black Hollywood's greatest legends, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Black Hollywood Legends, where every story sings, even from the shadows.